So, what is emotional intelligence? And this section relates to chapter 1. Now, basically, in a nutshell, emotional intelligence is when you understand, accept, and validate your feelings, and it's also being in charge of them. So, when you feel that you can manage your own emotions, your expression of your emotions, and also your moods. It also means that you are accepting of other people's feelings, that you validate their feelings, and you exercise empathy. So just to define EQ a little bit more. So EQ, which is the terminology that I like to use, EQ basically stands for emotional quotient. So if you think about IQ stands for your intellectual quotient. So it's just what is your quotient of your emotions, meaning your understanding, your intelligence around it. It's also referred to as EI. A lot of people call it EI. I prefer to call it EQ. But those are just different acronyms that you can use when you're referring to emotional intelligence. Now, there are many kinds of intelligences. So we have, obviously, what I just mentioned, intellectual. We have verbal, logical, visual, bodily, musical, interpersonal, and intrapersonal. Intrapersonal is obviously your communication with yourself. So it's you and understanding yourself. And interpersonal is about your interaction with other people. And you also have spiritual intelligence. So EQ is part of interpersonal and intrapersonal intelligence, which means it's about the understanding and how you interact with yourself and with other people. So why is emotional intelligence so important? And to me, EQ equals success, and I know that a lot of other people will agree with that, because research has proven that emotional intelligence is what makes a person more successful than intellectual intelligence. Now, as I mentioned before, life is all about relationships. So whether it's in business, whether it's with your partner, at school, university, it doesn't matter where, everything is about relationships. And when you have the ability to communicate and interact successfully with other people, that is where success comes from. Because if you don't understand people and you don't know how to interact with them, you cannot succeed. So your relationships depend on your interaction. Your business depends on your interaction. Your health, your stress levels, everything depends on interaction, either with yourself or with other people. And that is why more and more research has shown, and scientists are now saying and have proven, that emotional intelligence is far more important than any of the other intelligences when it comes to success. So what are emotions? And I know that some people think that feelings and emotions are the same thing. And there's actually a subtle difference between feelings and emotions. So looking at the slide, I just want to explain a little bit about what emotions are and what feelings are. Now, our emotions and feelings come from the way that we interpret life and events through our senses. All the information, and I will discuss this in detail a little bit down the line, but just to show you quickly the difference, when we interpret life, so say for instance you see something, that information comes into your brain and your mind. It creates a thought, the thought creates a feeling, and the feeling creates an emotion. Now, so the difference between feeling and emotion is, feeling is what it comes directly from your interpretation. So it's something you feel, but the emotion is the energy. So if you think about it, we've all been angry in the past, right? So when you've been angry at some stage in the past, you have this certain feeling in your body. It gives you energy, and that energy is what then makes you act out what you are feeling. So your emotion is that little bridge between your feeling and your action or your behavior. It's the energy of your feelings. So that is the subtle difference. But I do talk about them both. And so when I'm talking about feelings or emotions, I'm kind of talking about the same thing, but there is that subtle difference between feelings and emotions. Now, here's the thing, very, 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 very important point, and that is that all feelings are okay. Every single feeling that you have, every single feeling that anybody else has is completely okay. It's completely normal, whether people understand them or not. It's what we do with them that matters. It's all about the actions, the behavior. It's all about what you do with that energy of the emotion that is very important. Now, why are feelings so important? And in a nutshell, or basically because every single thing you do in life is based on how you feel. Every single thing that you do, everything is based on how you feel. So what car you buy, what food you eat, what food you don't eat, the quantities of food that you eat, how you treat other people, what you buy in terms of clothes, shoes, anything, every single choice you make is based on your feelings, every single thing. So it's so important for everybody to understand, and not just when it comes to buying, everything that you do, as I said, every choice, the partner that you choose to spend your life with, the activities, the experiences that you have or don't have, everything comes down to your feelings and how you feel about yourself or whatever is going on. And as I said, we'll go into depth about this. But now you can see why feelings are so important and why being emotionally intelligent is so important, so that you don't make unconscious decisions, that you're conscious of your actions and you're conscious of your choices. So I want to show you a few of the attributes that a person with a high EQ has. Now, somebody who has gone through this type of training and has become very self-aware and has developed their emotional intelligence, they have the ability to empathize. And that simply means being able to understand from somebody else's perspective. They have the ability to self-soothe, to calm themselves down, to handle conflict, to self-motivate, to recognize emotions and know what to do with them, and the ability to manage their moods. Now, the one thing that we never ever want to encourage or teach people is to say to them, being emotionally intelligent is about controlling your emotions, because that's a really hard thing to do. Sometimes we need to control our emotions in a specific setting, but you know, when you become emotionally intelligent, you find that if you've had a problem with anger before, if you've had a problem with rage, if you've had a problem with anxiety, the more you understand your emotions and the more you accept and validate them, the less you have problems with having to, or should I say, the less problem you have with outbursts, the less problems you have with anger that is out of control, the less problems you have with anxiety. But you will learn that as we go along. So as I say, it's about you're able to manage your emotions more, but we don't. I just want to make sure that you understand that being emotionally intelligent is not about controlling emotions, because we want to encourage people to talk about their emotions and to express them, but to express them appropriately. So not in violence, not in a way of bullying, not in any form or take any action that's going to hurt themselves or hurt other people. So all of these abilities translates to increased concentration at school, which means children get better grades, because when they don't have to think about their emotions the whole time, or they've got emotions that are bugging them, they're able to focus more, and which means they then get better grades. You're able to manage your stress more appropriately. You have improved relationships at school and at home, improved confidence and self-esteem, and you have a general increase in happiness. So, you know, people who understand themselves and understand other people are much happier, because they're more accepting of who they are, and they're more accepting of other people as well. Now, these are the attributes of a person who has a low EQ. These are people that think that life just happens to them, that they have absolutely no control over themselves, their life, how they feel. They live in a constant state of fear. They don't take responsibility for their own lives. They blame everyone else for their feelings. They blame everyone else for their bad behavior. Now, here's the thing about people who think that their feelings are created by somebody else. Now, as I said in the beginning, that all your feelings are yours. You create your feelings. You create your feelings based on your interpretation of life and of what has happened. So they're yours. Nobody else can physically get into your body and make you angry because it's all based on your perception. The other thing as well, though, is that you are never to blame for somebody else's bad behavior or vice versa, because if you own your feelings and you understand that you create your feelings and emotion based on your interpretations, then you have the choice of what to do with that information. So you choose how to act, you choose how to behave. So, and I know that when I heard this the first time, when I attended my training 17 years ago, it was the most amazing thing that had ever been said to me. First of all, when they said to me, you know, your feelings are normal, every single one of them, no matter if people understand them or not. But the second thing, when they said to me, somebody else's bad behavior is not my fault, I can't tell you how much that lifted a weight off my shoulders, because I'd been in abusive relationships before. I was always blamed by my abusers and said, well, if you had listened, if you had behaved, you know, this wouldn't have happened. Or when you get a hiding as a child and because your parent is angry, and then you always feel that it's your fault, that their behavior is your fault, you caused it. So understanding and knowing that everybody's behavior is their own responsibility and their own feelings are theirs and their own responsibility is incredibly freeing, and it's also incredibly empowering, because when you understand this, it helps you to know and feel that you are in charge of your life. You are in charge of your choices. You are in charge of the expression of your feelings and emotions. And that is incredibly empowering, because if, like the slide shows, where, you know, people who don't have a high EQ, where they're blaming everybody else for how they feel and for their behavior, that is very disempowering, because it makes you feel hopeless and helpless, that you can't do anything about it. So it's very empowering when you know that you can actually take your power back and you are in charge of your decisions and the people, you know, the way people behave in your life and the way you behave. So following on, or should I say going down the list then, a person with a low EQ is very defensive, very unforgiving, very judgmental and critical. They're unable to maintain good relationship, and they lack the ability to empathize, and they lack social skills. And you know that this ability or the lack of empathy in the world is one of our biggest problems in society today. They did a study in the South African prisons, and they discovered that most of the inmates had no empathy, because if you have empathy and you understand or can imagine what somebody else will feel when you hurt them, you wouldn't do it. So this is the biggest aspect when it comes to changing the world and changing violence and bullying and conflict, is when you have empathy and when you are able to teach other people how to develop their empathy. So this is what happens when we don't understand our feelings. We tend to express ourselves in ways that are not acceptable. We end up hurting other people. We end up hurting ourselves. And as you can see from this image, this is why there's domestic violence. This is why there's violence in the world. So whether it's gang violence, whether it's domestic violence, whether it's hitting your child, spanking your child, all of those aspects are not healthy. They, you know, and this is the thing that is hard for a lot of people to understand, especially when it comes to children and giving children hidings and spanking them. They think that it's okay, but science and research has shown over and over again that just because that happened in the past and just because we grew up with it and that was acceptable, it's not acceptable, because we teach children how to become adults that get their way or express their emotions with violence. So violence, whether it's violence on your own children, and even if it's a smack, that is violence. You are hurting somebody else's body, whether it's your spouse, whether it's being in a gang or any other way. Expressing your emotions in this way is not acceptable, and that is what has created a lot of the problems in the world today. Right, so there is good news. The most amazing thing about emotional intelligence is that you can teach it from the age of 8 months already, and you are never too old to learn. You can be 103 and still learn about emotional intelligence. This is not something that has been hardwired, or should I say, the fact that you didn't learn it at a young age. It's got nothing to do with your hardwiring. Your mind, your brain can create new neural pathways, learn new skills. So you are never ever too old to learn these vital life skills. And to me, that's always very, very good news to hear, and for other people to hear, because I think a lot of people get into their 50s and 60s and they go, oh my gosh, you can't teach an old dog new tricks, and what is the point of learning something new? Well, this is something you can learn at any age. And I remember many years ago when I was running a class, there was a lady who attended, and she was in her 70s. And I said to her, with all due respect, why are you here? Why do you want to learn more about emotional intelligence? And she said, well, my mom died in her 90s, which means that I possibly have another 20 years of life. And if this is going to improve my life and the way I relate to people for the next 20 years, then I'm all for it. So it's a wonderful attitude. And I just think it's fantastic if all of us had this attitude, but also to know that this is something you can learn and teach at any age.